Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make these perfect gluten-free vanilla cupcakes. These cupcakes are probably the best vanilla cake I've ever had. And they're so simple, so let's get into it. So first we're going to sift the dry ingredients, which consist of all-purpose gluten-free flour. I'm using mine, of course, and then there's baking powder, baking soda, and salt. And we'll just sift these together and then put them aside. Now we'll go ahead and cream the butter and sugar together until light and fluffy. As always, you will find the link to this recipe in the description box below the video. So we're going to add the eggs. There are 3 of them, one at a time, beating well between each. Now we can add in the sour cream. The sour cream is really what makes these cupcakes, I think. They take it from just ordinary cupcakes to extraordinary. They are just incredible. As soon as they came out of the oven the first time I made them, I gave my husband one unfrosted and I took one unfrosted, and we were like, we could eat this by itself, no frosting. And that's when you know it's a really good cake because you don't need frosting. So now I'm adding a ton of my, it's like a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half of my homemade vanilla. If yours does not have vanilla bean flecks in it or the seeds, I would go ahead and use, if you can, either vanilla bean paste or break open an actual vanilla bean and scrape out the insides, just because you want that really strong punch of vanilla flavor. And then we're going to put the mixer on low and add in the flour a little bit at a time because we don't want a whole cloud of white flour everywhere. And then as soon as you add that last little bit of flour, go ahead and shut it off. And then you can finish incorporating the rest of that flour with a spatula by hand because you don't want to go too far in over mixing. And this is what the batter should look like. It's a really thick batter. So if yours comes out super thick, that's perfect. I like to use a cookie scoop, a large cookie scoop, to scoop the batter into the cupcake liners. You can use a couple of spoons if you'd rather. You can even fill a pastry bag if you wanted to and do it that way. But what I like to do, and I learned this in a Craftsy class of all places a long time ago, is I like to bake only 2 or 3 to start because everybody's oven is different. Everybody's cookie scoop might be a different size. And I want to make sure that I have the appropriate amount in there and that I also have the time right before I go baking an entire batch and not know how they're going to come out. So just bake. You don't have to do this by any means, but it really is a good practice to get into so you don't mess up your entire batch. And these go in a 350 oven for approximately 20 to 22 minutes. But like I said, everybody's oven is different. Yours may be a little less time or a little more time. And these to me are perfect where they landed as far as how puffy they got on top. It wasn't like an overly mushroomed cupcake, and it was just the perfect size for what I wanted anyway. I like a good frosting to cake ratio usually. However, like I said, these cupcakes are so darn good that they don't even require any kind of frosting. But we're going to put really good American buttercream on these and they will be elevated to new heights. Whenever I make American buttercream or any buttercream with powdered sugar in it, I always like to sift it first because otherwise you may get lumps. Not necessarily you will, but it's just best practice to do this. And look at this old sifter. I call this my vintage sifter, like something that one of our grandmothers would have actually. Actually, normally I use a large sieve, and I have two large sieves, and they are both currently in the dishwasher. So I'm using this old sifter, this hand crank sifter, and I'm just going to sift all the powdered sugar onto a sheet of plastic or parchment paper, and then I'll put it back in the bowl. I think I've had this sifter for, oh my gosh, probably like 30 years. And it's good, but I like the sieve better. It just goes so much faster. So just lift up the parchment and you can pour it right back into the bowl. Very easy. And then don't throw away that parchment because you can use that again. The only other ingredients in my American buttercream are butter and vanilla extract. And of course, I use my homemade vanilla. And in buttercream, especially, I always use salted butter. I think it makes such a huge difference. You can use unsalted, but just make sure you add a little bit of salt to your buttercream because that flavor will be missed, really. So now we'll beat up the butter until it is nice and creamy. And I'm using a blowtorch here because my butter was not soft enough. So I've seen this done before by many a pastry chef, and it really does work just to loosen it up just a little bit to soften it up and get that going really well before we start adding in the powdered sugar and the vanilla, of course. So I add just like one spoonful at a time of the powdered sugar. It's just so much easier to control the cloud of powdered sugar that you will have otherwise. My American buttercream is not overly sickeningly sweet like a lot of American buttercreams are. And that is because I use a 1-to-1 ratio of butter to powdered sugar by weight. So, in other words, the entire recipe calls for 680 grams of butter and 680 grams of powdered sugar. And you will find most American buttercream recipes to have so much more powdered sugar in them. I'm not sure why that is because the texture of this is absolutely perfect. You don't need extra powdered sugar. And what ends up happening is they end up adding some form of liquid, either milk, water, heavy cream sometimes. And there's no need for that with this buttercream. You do not need any extra liquid, any liquid at all. So I'm going to add the vanilla here. And again, these are vanilla on vanilla cupcakes. So we want that real punch of vanilla flavor. Now we're going to let this go. And you will see it transform from a deeper yellow into an almost white color. And of course, the texture will be incredibly creamy and fluffy and soft and beautiful. I like to let this go on like medium. On a stand mixer, I think it's level 4. for about 3 to 5 minutes. And it really transforms from something that is quite heavy and dense to something that's extremely light and airy. And of note about the airiness of buttercream like this, what you can do after you've been beating this on a good speed for a while is turn it down to low and let it go for another like minute or two, and that should knock out most of the air bubbles. I learned that in some kind of, I don't know, cake decorating class I took. I can't even remember. I've taken so many classes, either in person, online, or both. And I learned that years ago for how to get like the air bubbles out of your buttercream when you're trying to ice a cake smooth and whatever. And that was a really great trick that it's stuck with me all the while. Okay, this is pretty good here. I don't know if you can see it in the video here, but it already looks extremely light and very pale in color, almost to the point of being white, even though there's a good amount of butter in it. Let me just show you this texture. It is unbelievable, you guys. Perfectly smooth. It almost looks like a Swiss meringue, doesn't it? So now I'm going to just knock all that, the extra air bubbles out by turning it on low and letting it go for a good 30 seconds to a minute. And that'll just smooth out those air bubbles. Most of them. You'll always have a couple, but this really works. Okay, so now I have everything set up for decorating the cupcakes. I have a open star tip in my pastry bag, and I'm just twisting the end and shoving it through the pastry tip so that none of it comes out. Not that it will, but I'm putting my pastry bag into a tall glass so it's a lot easier to fill. And then I'm just going to fill it. So I'm just going to pipe a like swirl, the classic swirl on here. And I just go around the sides and then slowly build up in the center. And you can go as high as you want, as low as you want. You can do whatever you want with these cupcakes. You can just take a little spatula and slap some frosting on and call it a day. And you can put sprinkles on them like I'm doing here. I'll probably leave some without sprinkles, some with. My husband is not a huge sprinkle person. Okay, let's try these now, and I want to show you just how soft and wonderful these cupcakes are. I've been searching for a vanilla cupcake recipe or a vanilla cake recipe forever that is something that can be my go-to recipe, and these are just divine. And this is how I always eat my cupcakes. I tear off the bottom and flip it over and make a sandwich out of it. It's less messy that way. But the vanilla flavor is so perfect in this. You get lots of vanilla flavor. They're so soft, delicious. Enjoy.